Alright, so here's a little test of picks. The idea is that, of course, I normally sit behind the instruments, so I don't really know what they sound like from the front. And when I had an online mandolin lesson with my teacher the other day, she pointed out that perhaps her perception of what these picks sound like isn't actually the same as mine. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to record in the same room with the same mandolin, same player. I'm going to record several picks and see which one I like the sound of. And if you have a view on this, then please leave a comment. So we are going to start with maybe the industry standard. So this is a Fender Heavy pick, and let's see what that sounds like. Right, so that feels obviously very simple, very familiar. Nothing wrong with it in terms of how it feels. Let's see how it sounds. Now then, of course, there's the Dunlop picks. A lot of people like these ones here. They're just over 1 millimeter in thickness. Dunlop, sorry, Tortex, I think they're called. So let's try these. So my impression of this is that I'm having to work a little bit harder. And the pick glides across the strings very nicely, but I'm having to work a bit harder to get sound and volume out of it. But of course I'm sitting behind the instrument, so let's see what it sounds like from the front. This one here is also a Dunlop, but this time a little bit thinner. One of the things I'm trying to do here is to find my ideal pick thickness, and from what I know so far, it's probably just below or just above 1 millimeter. So this one is just below. Let's see how different this sounds. I must say this one feels a little bit more comfortable to me than the slightly thicker Dunlop pick that I had a moment ago. But let's keep going. So this one here is a Dunlop Jazz. It's a bit smaller and has a slightly pointy end, which should normally give a clear, bright tone as far as I know. It's much smaller, took a bit of getting used to, and a slightly different pick grip, I think. But once I got into that, that felt alright. Now here's another fairly thin one, and this is a John Pearse pick. So you can see the shape is a little bit longer. The whole pick is really quite thin. Let's see how that feels. Little bit of flex in that one, so that makes it feel different, but because it's a bit longer than the last one I had there, slightly more to hold on to, which might be significant. This one here is a Dunlop Big Stubby, except it's not actually that big. It's still a fairly thin pick. I know a lot of people like this one. The plastic feels a bit more plasticky, bit more brittle, but let's see what the sound is like. So that was the not so big Stubby. This one is one that a lot of people like. A lot of people like these big triangles. So that's still a Dunlop pick, Ultex 1.14 millimeters. I must say I don't tend to use these an awful lot because they feel a bit clumsy to me, and I think I struggle to get sound out of them, but in that recent conversation with my teacher, she was saying that maybe there's just less pick click and less brightness, which might actually result in a better listening experience from in front of the instrument. So let's see. That's actually still quite nimble. I'm just not used to holding the bigger shape. It's probably a matter of habit, but that felt quite different. Now here's that whole idea taken to the extreme, I guess. It's a Golden Gate pick, and this one's almost completely round. I must say I don't get along very well with this pick. I struggle to get anything but scratching out of it when I play a melody. For chords it's great, but for melody, other story. I struggle. So, whole different story. I'm really intrigued to see how this is going to sound on the recording, because to me behind the instrument it just sounds a bit scratchy. Here's a bit of an experiment. So what you can see here is a wooden pick. A little bit thicker, of course. Just let's see how that feels and sounds. nice to have the feeling of wood under your fingers, but I think it's just that little bit less nimble. Right, just got interrupted there on the Pro Plec Jazz Mando pick. This one seems to be quite popular, and let's see how it sounds. Now that's going to be interesting to listen to later on, because that felt a lot quieter than some of the other picks, but maybe it just comes across like that from behind the instrument. We'll see. Now this one here is another one that a lot of people really seem to like. It's a Dunlop Primetone, so it's 1.3 millimeters, I think. And pretty standard shape, but a special material apparently. And let's see how that sounds. So that feels quite nice on the one hand, because you have this textured surface that makes it a bit easier to grip. On the other hand, it's not the most nimble pick, I think, from my impressions. So I'll be interested to see how it sounds. Next we have some picks from a company called V-Picks. They do all sorts of picks, and these ones all happen to have this big triangle shape. So here's one that's called Tremolo, misspelled, but there you go. And it feels relatively thin, quite a lot of flex. Let's see how it sounds. Now that felt a bit brighter, I think. Let's see how it sounds on the recording. Same company also does this one, slightly thicker and more rounded. It's called the Storyteller. It has a very nice design on it. Now that feels a bit less familiar to me. Again, it feels a little bit scratchy. But again, perhaps it sounds different when you're actually listening from the front. Same company here. This pick is called Saga. And it's again slightly thicker and a kind of rounded triangle shape. Next one, still the same company. It's a V-pick Gladiator. Probably not a huge amount of difference there, but we'll see. And the last V-pick that I'm going to have is this one here. I'm only using this because it's got Jazz Mando printed on it. It's really a bit thicker and rounder than what I'd normally use for melody. Again, probably great for chords. But melody, I wouldn't normally go for this kind of thing. But then, as you can hear, I'm only a mediocre player, so I can always learn and get used to better things. Now I felt I was having to work quite hard there to get that triplet, and even then I wasn't really happy with the result. So it feels a little bit less nimble than some of the others. Perhaps one that I'll keep for chord playing. Now the next couple of picks are from a company that a lot of people really like, called Blue Chip, and this first one here is it's called a TD40, and it's pretty much standard shape, and for a lot of people there's no better pick. Let's see how it sounds from the front. Right, I hope you can differentiate between the sound of the pick and the sound of my playing mistakes. But anyway, here's another Blue Chip, and this one is in the jazz shape, so it's a slightly thicker, I think, and much smaller, like the Dunlop jazz pick that I had there earlier. I played that for a little bit longer because, as with the Dunlop Jazz, I needed to adjust a little bit, get used to the smaller shape and adjust my pick grip to that. So the first time round wasn't so great, second time felt more correct to me. So that's the blue chips. A lot of people really like them. Another company that also does pretty posh picks, but which is much less well known, is Gravity Picks. So Gravity does acrylic picks and also a gold series from another material. So we'll start with a standard acrylic one, just because that's the standard pick they do. It's a bit cheaper than the gold series, but a lot of people don't like acrylic picks. So to me they sound okay, but let's see. So that's the standard shape. For a long time I was playing picks that have a bit more of a point to them. So I tried the standard pointed shape, and they look like this. And you can even have your name printed on them if you like. So a bit of fun there. Probably sounds a bit different. Now subjectively, that slightly more pointed shape helps a little bit with that triplet, but I'm sure it depends on what you're used to. And of course, what I'm really interested in seeing is how it'll sound on the recording. So that was the Gravity acrylic standard pointed. Gravity also does thinner picks, which look like this. And this one is 0.9 millimeters, so it's a little bit more flexible, feels a bit thinner, and let's see how it sounds. So that's the Gravity Thin, and now we get to the Gravity Gold series, which is their more expensive range. So here we have a Gold series pick in the classic shape, 1 millimeter thickness, and yeah, let's see. Now I mispicked there, but generally speaking that actually felt quite nice. Felt quite pleasant. Another shape that they do is this one here. So for a very long time I was playing these ones pretty much exclusively. They're slightly more pointed and they're called Razer. Again, Gravity Gold series, 1 millimeter thickness. I still really like the feel of this one, and I think I just find it comforting to have a bit of a pointier pick to play. But of course that doesn't mean it sounds any good. It feels right to me, but maybe it doesn't sound right. Maybe there'll be too much brightness, too much pick click, whatever floats your boat, I suppose. But it feels quite nice. So the last gravity pick that I've got here is again from the Gold series. This one is a bit thicker, 1.5 millimeters, and it's in another shape that they do called the Sunrise. So it also has a point, but at a different angle, and it feels a little bit different. It has a bit more width to hold on to. So let's see how this sounds. So once I got used to the slightly different shape, actually that felt really comfortable, including with that tricky triplet up there. So that's the Gravity Gold Series Sunrise 1.5 millimeter. The last company that I've got here is a British company called Hawk. They do picks in all sorts of shapes, but their classic one is called the Tonebird. It's basically just your classic guitar pick shape, and it has a bit of a point there, and a right-handed bevel for me as a right-handed player. And I really like these at the moment, but again, I like them from behind the instrument. So let's see how they sound recorded. And so on. So that's the standard shape. Here's a very similar one with a bit more width and a bit more roundness. See what difference that makes. So yeah, that felt quite comfortable to me, and quite a good combination of thickness, glide, and well, there's no flexibility in the pick. What I mean is the kind of nimbleness that I keep talking about. It feels quite comfortable to play that faster triplet with it. Now, we can, of course, go a bit more triangular and a bit more rounded. So this is the Hawk SB pick, which is special because it has 3 corners with different degrees of roundness, which is quite interesting. So you can use the same pick to have a very round point here, or a much more pointier one here. So with the round one, I get this. Again, probably more for chord playing. I really struggle to get volume and tone out of the round corner when I try to play a melody. But I'll use the pointy corner now, see what that gives. So if that sounds alright from in front of the instrument, which we'll see on the recording of course, that might be quite a nice universal kind of pick that you can turn around depending on what you want to do with it, whether you want a rounder or a more pointy point. And yeah, so that's the Hawk SB. Hawk also does a shape that's quite similar to the sunrise shape on the gravity pick that I showed you earlier. It looks like this, and again I bought it with a right hand bevel. It's probably at the thicker end of what I normally play, 1.4mm. There you go. So like the gravity sunrise, that shape just feels quite comfortable. It's a nice compromise between the big triangles and the more standard shaped, slightly pointier picks. Interesting pick shape, this one, I think. Now also from Hawk we have a really small one like this, more or less Dunlop jazz shape, and I think these only come with a standard bevel. I think they might be a little bit too small to put a right-handed bevel on them. But yeah, I may have to adjust my pick grip again slightly just to accommodate the smaller shape. Let's see. So that's the Little Hawk. Then we have this one, also from Hawk. Similar thickness, but again slightly different shape. And this one has holes in the middle, probably to keep the pick from slipping. And the final pick I've got for today is again Hawk, again with holes in the middle, slightly smaller and slightly different shape. That's the last one I'm going to try today. and I really look forward to listening to the recording and seeing how all of those picks sound from in front of the instrument rather than from my usual perspective of being behind it. So there you go. I mean, obviously, I'm not the world's greatest mandolin player. I made lots of mistakes there, but you should still get a sense of what the picks sound like. And maybe you have your favorite. It's my firm belief that all of the companies producing the picks that I've just played there do quality work and put their best into their products, obviously. But what one prefers as a player will depend on how it feels, how it sounds, what you like, and not the same pick is going to suit every instrument, every set of strings, every possible player. So I think it's worth playing around a little bit, and that's just what I tried to do today. I listened to the recording to see what I like in terms of sound. If you have any favorites, please let me know, because I'd like to know what you think sounds good. And yeah, thank you for sitting through all this. See you again soon.